Hi, Roy here. On my channel, Roy Reads Anything. We started with a little project where I bought a set of books that were being sold as shabby chic decoration, which is a thing. You can just buy a bunch of random books, even sight unseen, for the way they look in their sort of decaying splendour, rather than something to read. And I was intrigued by, well, what if you buy them and you actually read them? What do you find? And it is a yard-long pile that I'll put up a picture of, probably about two-thirds of the way through. Um, Spectacle bare level on the picture. And the one I plucked out this week, Oxford by Christopher Hobhouse, came out in the 40s. So it's a book about the city of Oxford. Why is it worthless, or worthless enough to end up in a pile of junk books? I guess partly because if you were going to Oxford, you'd probably want something more recent than 1939 to guide you around. And partly because of condition. I think this would be, if the dust jacket was complete, this would make a really nice object. As it is, I'll probably put this into a sleeve to preserve what's left of it. But yeah, it's a little bit tatty. Physically, it's a nice book. You get map on the map on the fly papers. Is that this first bit? End papers. End papers. Um, can't quite read the person's name who owned it. It looks like R.W. Cooley, as like like a what is it? Coulis. It's something you get on a plate. Yeah. Okay. So Mr. or Mrs. Reduced Sauce used to own it. Some great illustrations, colour plates, lots of black and white pictures. And the way it's done is quite good. It's got a mixture of history and up-to-date stuff. So you get medieval Oxford as it was, history of the city, you get medieval Oxford as it is, with some up-to-date stuff about the surviving buildings. So it's, I like old books about places. I do sometimes take them along to the place and try to use them as well as possible. Some of these old engravings are really interesting as well. Um, but because the book itself is quite old now, like I said, it's pre-war. I don't know much about this Christopher Hobhouse author. Apparently, he was killed in the war, unfortunately. Um, but because it's old, the up to date stuff is now historical, and I was particularly struck by the modern Oxford section and some utterly jaw-droppingly patronising stuff about the women students. So yeah, so there's an illustration from a section there. Um, Imaginary, a drawing of sweet girl undergraduates in the high. So I'd never come across the word undergraduates before, so it's a bit like cigarettes or usherettes. It sounds like it's the female version, and or the miniature version. Yeah, so that was obviously back in Victorian times, the fantasy of there being the possibility of female undergraduates was caused to do a picture. But reading about the current state of play, which, as I said, is reflects attitudes of the times, I suppose. Um, the statutes of the university now apply impartially to women as well as to men. There are some 750 women in Oxford altogether. They were admitted to lectures of the university in the year 1880, to its examinations in 1884, and to degrees in 1920. 1920, so it's a bit like the same sort of time scale as the vote, I suppose. There are now 4 women's colleges names, though their numbers are so small. A casual visitor to Oxford might well gain the impression that the women form an actual majority. They are perpetually a wheel. They bicycle in droves from lecture to lecture, capped and gowned, handlebars laden with notebooks, and notebooks crammed with notes. So this fear of women on bicycles seems to have still been around in the 1930s. It's like whenever people are getting anxious about women being powerful in some way, the bicycles seem to be part of it. Perpetually a wheel. Relatively few men go to lectures, the usefulness of which was superseded some while ago by the invention of the printing press. The women, docile and literal, continue to flock to every lecture with medieval zeal, and record in an hour of longhand scribbling what could have been assimilated in 10 minutes in an armchair. Earnestly, so that's one thing, they actually go to the lectures, the fools, unlike these sort of gentlemen scholars. Earnestly they debate the merits of their teachers, the magnetism of X, the eloquence of Y, the spirituality of Z, as though these insignificant pedants were so many Abelards. The assiduity of the women undergraduates is stupefying. After the long morning, back to the thing of like they actually go to the lectures. After the long morning's round of lectures, they swarm to the Bodleian. Radcliffe Square is dark with their bicycles, them again. After dark, in their own college libraries or in their comfortless little college rooms, they huddle for hours on end, stooping and peering over standard textbooks. They are tremendous sticklers for tradition and routine. Every rule and regulation of college or university is literally observed. The prescribed books are read from cover to cover. The stereotyped opinions are faithfully noted and dutifully believed. The women undergraduates have a truly Teutonic respect for their own dons, who in their turn take full advantage of etc. of it. Then there's a thing about female dons, spinsters almost to a woman. They present a terrifying caricature of the medieval tutor. Shortcuts are not allowed. Originality is forbidden. However wasteful or slow, the whole of the scheduled course must be covered. He labours that point on and on. Many of the women suffer actual nervous breakdowns. Others become stupid and mechanical. The great majority end up as school teachers. So there's an undercurrent of sexism to this, which I think I could detect. Yeah, I know. It needed me to explain that to you.
Thank you. It's very kind of you.
More about women dons. Uses the word undergraduate again. And again, this comparison with these women, even pictures of them in real life, swarming and bicycling.
The only way they can swarm those, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I suppose so. Instead of deep sofas and coal fires, they have convertible divans and gas stoves. Instead of claret and port, they drink. Instead of claret and port, they drink cocoa and Kia Ora.
Oh God, I hate this man. I didn't know Kia Ora existed in the.
Yeah, well, that's the whole that actually with hindsight, that's the interesting bit. Instead of the lordly breakfasts and lunches which a man can command in his own rooms, they are fed on warm cutlets and gravy, off cold plates at a long table decked with daffodils.
No, not decked with daffodils.
And then, amazingly, lovely aerial photo there of this. See, from this height, you can't even see the women swarming across the streets in their bicycles. In a detective novel called Gaudy Night, Miss Dorothy Sayers has described to perfection the small and unwholesome atmosphere of a women's college. Well, I've never read Gaudy Night, but I think I'd take that sort of stuff from her, perhaps with a little bit.
We have seen it on the telly.
Yeah, we have. Yes, yeah. Maybe she's earned the right talk about, to be
Recognition.
critical of the
Mm.
system in a way that this guy um, arguably hasn't. Anyway, Oxford,
Funny.
good place to go. Watch out for the swarming undergraduates in their with the gowns streaming behind them, going to every single lecture, reading the books covered. They sound like ideal students in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
They read the books. Yes, okay. Uh, good. I'll be back to the pile at some point. Who knows what's coming next? As for the final fate of this book, um,
In.
Jenny obviously wants to put it in pride of place on her bookshelves. Um, I just, it irks me that the dust jacket's so ragged. I'll try and even if I'm passing it on, I'll try and repair that. And yes, it'll either stay with the other books about places, or it
Misogynists.
this had been the file under Oxford or misogyny. Difficult to
Mm.
decide. Um, okay, that's all for now. Back soon with something else.